They told me I was a disgrace. But they didn't scream it. They whispered it. Quietly. Like poison slipped into tea. I was 20. And it wasn't just what they said, it was how easily they erased me. One morning, I had a family. By nightfall, the locks were changed. A plastic bag of clothes sat on the porch. No explanation. No goodbye. My father didn't yell. He just wouldn't look at me. My mother held her rosary tighter than she ever held my hand. And my sister. She was the one who showed him the video. I hadn't even known it still existed. A mistake. A moment of trust turned into shame. But not because I made it public. Because someone else did, and I refused to pretend it didn't happen. That was my real crime. Not the video. But telling the truth out loud. I left that night with one backpack and $20 in my pocket. They said I was reckless. They said I was unstable. They said I failed. But they were wrong. Because failure would have meant I never stood back up. And one day, I did more than just stand. 15 years later, I walked into a courtroom. Quiet. Alone. No press, no cameras. Just me. Sitting in the very back row of the gallery. My sister was at the defense table. Accused. Exposed. But still perfectly polished, like she'd spent a lifetime learning how to appear untouched. The judge entered. Took her seat. Scanned the room. And then, she paused. Tilted her head. And said, "Wait, is that the governor of Oregon?" The room froze. My sister turned. Her face drained of every drop of control. And suddenly, the girl they threw away was the woman they couldn't ignore. But to understand why I was sitting in that courtroom, you need to understand the day I stopped being their daughter. Let me take you back. I didn't pack right away. When my father slammed the door behind him and told me to figure it out, I just sat there for a while on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. The house was too quiet, like it was already pretending I didn't live there. The only thing I could hear was the soft clink of my mother's rosary as she paced in the hallway. She didn't come in. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just murmured prayers under her breath. Like I was already something to mourn. The video had started spreading that morning. A clip from 2 years ago, filmed without my consent, during a spring break I'd tried hard to forget. Some boy I'd trusted. Some moment I thought was private. It had resurfaced, and by noon, it had gone viral in the wrong corners of the internet. I hadn't even had a chance to process it before Cassandra, my older sister, found it. And instead of asking me what happened, she forwarded the link to our father with a message that read, "This will ruin us if you don't act now." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Do you want me to help?" Just, "Do something." That night, I learned what family honor really meant. It wasn't about protecting each other. It was about protecting reputation. When my father stormed into my room, he didn't ask if I had been coerced. He didn't ask who filmed it or how it got out. He just threw my college diploma onto the bed and said, "You think this degree means something now? You want to be seen like trash? Fine. Just not under my roof." He placed my bank card on the dresser and pointed toward the door. No yelling. No lecture. Just a verdict. My mother stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. Her eyes fixed on the floor like if she didn't look at me, none of this would be real. Cassandra stayed silent. She didn't even flinch. I packed slowly. Not because I had much, just a few clothes. My sketchbooks, a box of paints I couldn't bear to leave behind. But because I kept waiting for someone to say stop. To say, "You don't have to go." No one did. I zipped up my red backpack, the one I'd carried since freshman year, and walked down the hall like a ghost. As I passed the living room, my father stood at the window, staring out like I was already gone. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't say anything. On the porch, my mother had left a bag with toiletries and a coat. It was cold that night, unusually cold for Santa Rosa. I stood on the sidewalk for a few seconds, clutching the strap of my backpack, not knowing where I'd sleep or who I could even call. My phone buzzed, one message from Cassandra. Just 3 words. Don't drag us. I turned off my phone. That was the night I learned silence can be louder than any scream. That being disowned doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes, it looks like nothing at all. But somewhere in that stillness, as I walked into the dark, I made a quiet vow. If they didn't want to see me anymore, then one day, they'd see who I became without them. The first night, I slept in the back seat of Leah's car. She was a friend from school, more of a classmate, really, who offered me one night in her driveway after I texted her in panic. She didn't ask questions. She handed me a blanket, said lock the doors, and disappeared inside. I remember staring at the ceiling of her Honda Civic, wondering if this was what rock bottom looked like. Not dramatic. Just cold. By day 3, I was out of places to go. By day 7, I was on a Greyhound bus heading north. No destination in mind. No plan. Portland sounded far enough. Far enough from judgment. Far enough from anyone who might recognize my face from a video I never agreed to star in. When I arrived, it was raining. Of course it was. I stepped off the bus with $42 and a folded list of women's shelters I had Googled on a public library computer the night before. The first place was full. The second told me to try again next week. By evening, I found a transitional housing program that gave me a mattress on the floor and a set of sheets that smelled like bleach and something older. It wasn't safety. But it wasn't the street. They asked my name. I said Val. It was the first time I didn't say Valeria. And just like that, the rest of it began to fall away. I stopped using my last name. I stopped wearing the necklace my mother gave me when I turned 16. I cut my hair in the bathroom with a pair of dull scissors until it no longer looked like the girl in the photo they all remembered. I wasn't trying to become someone new. I just didn't want to be her anymore. I found work cleaning offices at night, empty conference rooms and overfilled trash cans. Then a second job serving coffee at a diner on S.E. Powell Boulevard. Cash tips. Burnt fingers. No questions asked. During breaks, I read old legal textbooks left behind in the housing center donation bin. I didn't understand half of what I was reading. But it felt like structure. Like proof I could still learn. Still think. I spoke less. Listened more. People assumed I was shy. Truth was, I didn't trust my voice anymore. Every time I spoke, I worried it would betray something about who I used to be. One night, while cleaning a dentist's office, I found a hand mirror cracked down the middle. I stared at it for a while, not sure why. My reflection looked hollow. But not broken. Just stripped. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of disappearing. Because the truth was, being no one had a kind of freedom I'd never known before. No expectations. No legacy to protect. No image to preserve. It was survival, yes. But it was also the beginning of something else. Something raw. And mine. I was 21, living on black coffee and adrenaline, juggling 3 jobs and still unable to afford a heater for my room. But I had a roof. I had silence. And for the first time, I was learning to build something in that silence. Not a name. Not a reputation. Just a life. One that no one could take from me this time. I poked my head around the corner and saw them. A woman, young, maybe 30, with a child clinging to her side. The boy couldn't have been more than 5. A uniformed man stood in front of them, holding out a clipboard with papers. He wasn't clinic staff. ICE. My heart dropped. Firma a key, he barked, jabbing the clipboard at her. Sign. It's already processed. She didn't move. Or maybe it was that I knew exactly what it felt like to be cornered and told to stay quiet. I stepped forward. She's not signing that, I said, voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. The officer turned to me. Who are you? I held my clipboard tighter. Nobody. Just someone who can read the system better than you think. I grabbed the papers, scanning them fast. Especially people in your position. I stayed quiet. Then he leaned forward. I run a nonprofit. We help families like hers. I think we could use someone like you. Not to clean. To help. I blinked. It had been months since anyone offered me anything more than a shift or a mop. He handed me a card. Pro Pueblo Libre. I didn't say yes right away. But I kept the card. Read it 3 times that night. And for the first time in over a year, I felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was a spark. The smallest flicker of purpose. I didn't start by changing the world. I started by making copies. Coffee runs, mailing envelopes, translating letters in back rooms with flickering lights. No title. No paycheck. No promises. Just a chance to sit in the room while real work happened. Pro Pueblo Libre was small, underfunded, and stretched thin. But the people there cared in a way I hadn't seen before. They didn't talk about change like it was some distant dream. They chased it, every day, with tired eyes and stubborn hearts. I watched. You have a mind for this, he said. Policy. Language. Leverage. I wanted to tell him I'd once dreamed of law school. That my GPA had been strong. That I'd had a future before it was buried under shame and silence. But I just said, thank you. Over time, I became more than the girl who made copies. I started attending hearings. Taking notes. Asking questions. Raphael introduced me to city staffers. Activists. Legal advisors who didn't flinch when they saw my thrift store coat or scuffed shoes. At night, I studied. Online courses in policy and nonprofit law. YouTube lectures on immigration reform. Old city budgets I printed out and read like bedtime stories. The more I learned, the angrier I became. But it wasn't the wild anger from before. It was focused. Sharp. Useful. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was becoming something else. At 24, I led my first town hall session. The microphone shook in my hand. But my voice didn't. We were arguing for emergency shelter funding during a brutal winter. One councilman smirked when I spoke. He said, "You're quite passionate." "Miss. Are you with a church?" I replied, "No. I'm with the people freezing to death while you ask about affiliations." The room went still. After the meeting, Raphael squeezed my shoulder. "You don't have to burn everything down," he said. "Just shine a light long enough, and the rot shows itself." I carried those words with me. By 26, I was overseeing our grant proposals. At 28, I was coordinating meetings with the State Human Rights Commission. No one asked where I came from. No one knew what had been done to me. They only saw what I did now. And that was enough. But still, every time someone asked if I wanted to run for office, I said no. Until one winter, when a state Senate seat opened unexpectedly. The community urged me to run. I filed quietly, without donors or headlines, just a campaign built on truth and town halls. And when the ballots came in, I didn't just win. I became something they'd never expected. A name voters believed in. A leader they could trust. Not because I was perfect, but because I had survived. Not because I didn't believe in change. But because I wasn't ready to be seen. Not yet. I didn't plan to go. There was no press statement. No security team. Not even a driver. I booked the flight under my legal name, Valeria Morgan, and checked into a small hotel near the courthouse using a prepaid card. I told no one. Cassandra's name had been plastered across every news site for 3 days straight. District Attorney under investigation for evidence suppression. Whistleblower claims case manipulation. Possibility of disbarment. The woman who once handed our father a video to protect the family was now the one facing trial for destroying someone else's future. The irony was bitter. But that wasn't why I went. I didn't fly across states to celebrate her downfall. I went because I needed to see it with my own eyes. The same way I had once watched my own life collapse from the front porch of our childhood home. The courtroom was small and cold. Muted carpet. Ceiling lights that hummed like old refrigerators. No grand drama, just the low tension of lives unraveling behind paperwork. I entered from the side door, wearing a charcoal coat, sunglasses, and silence. I sat in the last row. Back straight. Hands still. Cassandra was already there. She looked impeccable, as always. Sharp black suit. Hair pinned perfectly. But her posture gave her away, shoulders stiff, hands restless in her lap. My mother sat beside her, face pale, mouth tight with worry. My father sat 2 seats down, arms folded, his eyes scanning everything except people. The judge entered. Audrey Jameson. A woman I'd met once, years ago, at a governor's roundtable on immigration policy. Sharp. Observant. No time for games. She took her seat, flipped through the case file, then paused. Her eyes drifted across the room, slowly, until they landed on me. She tilted her head. Then leaned forward slightly and said, "Wait, is that Valeria Morgan? The governor?" The silence hit hard. Every head turned. A reporter dropped his pen. Cassandra twisted around. Her mouth fell open, and for the first time in a long time, she looked genuinely lost. My mother gasped. My father blinked. As if trying to confirm whether I was real or just memory in motion. I didn't wave. Didn't nod. Didn't speak. I didn't need to. I was there. That was enough. The judge cleared her throat. Shuffled her papers, and continued as if nothing had happened. But nothing in that room returned to normal. I watched the proceedings quietly. Cassandra's lawyer made her case. The state presented theirs. And while they debated law and intent, I sat in the back like a question that had never been answered. When the session adjourned, I stood up without a word. Walked out the side door I came in through. Past reporters now whispering my name into their phones. Back at the hotel, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls. Messages. News alerts. But I didn't open any of them. I stood by the window, watching the city I once called home blur behind layers of glass. This time, I wasn't the one on trial. I wasn't the one being whispered about with pity or shame. I was the storm they didn't see coming. And I said nothing at all. By morning, my face was on every news channel. Not because I said anything. Not because I stood at a podium or gave a statement. But because I was seen, sitting in the back row of that courtroom like a ghost made real. Some headlines tried to spin it. Governor makes surprise appearance at sister's trial. Family tensions explode in courtroom cameo. From scandal to State House, the Valeria Morgan redemption arc. They speculated. Was I there to support her? To retaliate? To testify? I answered none of it. I let them guess. The story shifted again by noon. Someone unearthed it. The video. The one that had started everything 14 years ago. The same grainy footage. Re-uploaded by some anonymous account. It was pixelated, distorted, but still unmistakable. They called it the fall and rise of Valeria Morgan. Talk shows debated my morality. A former classmate appeared on a podcast claiming to have always known I had potential. And then, of course, there was him. The boy behind the camera. He gave a smug interview, half laughing, half shrugging. We were young. She knew I had it. I didn't think it would go this far. I watched him speak with the same expression I had the night he filmed me, too trusting, too quiet. Too in love with the wrong version of someone. I didn't flinch. I didn't send a cease and desist. I didn't call a lawyer. I let it air. Because I wasn't hiding anymore. My staff panicked. We should make a statement, they said. We can control the narrative. Threaten legal action. Remind the press this was a violation. I said no. Let them look. Let them see exactly what they think power shouldn't look like. Let them see a woman who was humiliated, discarded, and erased, and who still rose without permission. That night, my father called. First time in over a decade. His voice hadn't changed. Still stern. Still clipped. Still sharp enough to slice skin if you weren't careful. You're using our name for attention, he said. Dragging this family through the mud. I stared out the window as he spoke. I let him finish. Then I said, calm and clear. I carried your name longer than you carried me. Silence. I didn't ask to be a Morgan. I stayed one to remind myself who never to become. Click. He hung up. The next morning, I got a call from my cousin in Santa Rosa. Mom had been taken to the hospital. Blood pressure spike. No stroke, but close. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate either. I booked the flight. Some things still mattered. The house looked smaller than I remembered. It was the same one I'd been thrown out of at 20, but now the porch creaked louder, the paint peeled more, and the wind carried a silence I hadn't felt in years. My mother opened the door. She looked tired. Her makeup was carefully done, but her eyes were ringed with shadow. Her hands trembled as she reached for me, then pulled back. Thank you for coming, she said, voice thin. Inside, the air was heavy with lemon oil and something older, like tension baked into the furniture. My father stood at the far end of the living room in a crisp button-down shirt he clearly hadn't worn for comfort. He gave me a nod. Not a greeting. Just acknowledgement. Cassandra sat at the dining table, her fingers twisting a napkin into knots, tighter, tighter, until it tore. Her eyes stayed fixed on her plate, but her lips pressed into a line that quivered. I know I messed up, she said softly. I never thought it would go this far. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, knuckles white, breath shallow. And her words didn't reach me. They hovered somewhere between guilt and performance, unsure of what they truly meant. Then came the shift. My mother reached slightly across the table, not quite touching me. We were thinking, she began, maybe you could just say something to the prosecutor. Nothing formal. Just help. For family. The words hung in the air like smoke. I looked around the table. At my mother, still clinging to the hope that love and loyalty were interchangeable. At my father, always the enforcer, now quiet in a way that felt rehearsed. At Cassandra, who had once lit the match and now sat afraid of the flame. I put my fork down slowly. The sound echoed louder than any voice. If I weren't the governor, I asked, calmly, would I still be your daughter? No one answered. My mother looked away. My father blinked. Cassandra's lip trembled, but she said nothing. I pushed back my chair. The leather squeaked against the wood. I kept your name, I said, rising to my feet. But I built my life without you in it. No one stopped me. No one said my name. At the door. My mother's voice cracked. Valeria, please. I paused for half a second. But I didn't look back. Outside, the air was crisp and clear. The stars above Santa Rosa hadn't changed, but I had. And this time I wasn't walking away in shame. I was leaving on my terms, with nothing in my hands, but everything intact. I introduced the bill under a single spotlight. No stage. No crowd-pleasing music. Just a quiet conference room at the state capitol and a wall lined with crayon drawings from children whose families we'd helped over the years. I wore a white blazer. No jewelry. No notes. The press leaned in, unsure what kind of speech I was about to give. But I didn't come to perform. I've learned, I said, that power doesn't always look like shouting or violence. Sometimes, it whispers. Sometimes, it shows up at your dinner table wearing your last name. I paused. It reminds you who raised you. It questions your loyalty. It says, if you loved us, you wouldn't speak. Heads in the room lowered. I continued. This bill is for anyone who has ever been silenced not by strangers, but by those who claim to love them. It protects whistleblowers, survivors, and public officials from coercion, threats, and manipulation rooted in personal ties. We called it the Family Shield Act. A law that made it illegal to leverage private history for public compliance. A line drawn between personal shame and public service. It passed through committee faster than any of us expected. Editorials praised it as long overdue. Commentators said it was uniquely American, the kind of legislation born not from textbooks, but from blood and fire. And somewhere in my mind, I could still hear Raphael's voice. Shine a light long enough, and the rot shows itself. He was right. But to me, it wasn't political. It was personal. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. They knew. And for once, that knowledge didn't hurt me. It freed me. Weeks passed. No calls from my father. No emails from Cassandra. Not even a forwarded article from my mother. Just silence. But not the kind that wounds. The kind that lets you sleep. One afternoon, I spoke at a small leadership workshop in North Portland. Just 30 folding chairs. No cameras. No one important. I wore jeans and a gray cardigan. Poured my own coffee. Helped set up chairs. Someone asked me, how did you succeed without your family's support? I smiled. I didn't succeed despite them. I said. I succeeded when I stopped needing to be seen by them. They nodded. Some cried. Afterward, as people packed up, I noticed a man standing quietly at the back. Older. Tired around the edges. It took me a second to realize who it was. My father. He didn't move closer. Didn't demand anything. He just waited his turn. When the room emptied, he stepped forward. I never understood you, he said, voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe I don't have to. I didn't reply. Just nodded once. He turned and left. No hug. No apology. Just a door creaking open, slightly. That night, I walked alone through Laurelhurst Park. The leaves were falling. The sky was soft and gray. And for the first time, I felt something strange. Not victory. Not triumph. Just peace. I didn't rewrite the family name. I just rewrote what it meant to me. Sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is survive beautifully. In full view of those who once hoped you'd disappear. Sometimes, the people who break you are the ones who raised you. But healing doesn't mean they have to understand, it means you finally do. You don't owe your success to those who tried to silence you. Your story, your scars, and your strength are more than enough.